Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Etoff. I'm the Assistant Director for Governance, Procurement and Commissioning at Telford and Wrekin Council and the Council's Monitoring Officer. Welcome to the first meeting of the CSE Inquiry Member Advisory Group. Just to explain a bit about what's going to happen first off, obviously because this is a first meeting of this group and it's not really a formal council meeting, we haven't got a chair at the moment. So I'll step in until the first item of business, which is the election of chair, and I'll oversee that, and then obviously when a chair is appointed I'll invite them to come and sit next to me and then take control of the rest of the meeting. So that's the first bit of business that we're going to be doing today. So moving seamlessly onto the agenda, the item 1, election of chair. Are there any nominations?
Before we go there, Mr. Chairman, I take it I'll call you Mr. Chairman at this point. There is, I think, already a role for this advisory committee in as much as that we need to ensure that what we do is both open, transparent and beyond reproach. Now, undertakings were given by the lead cabinet member with responsibility for this at the onset that there be no cabinet involvement at this point. It is my understanding, with all due respect to Councillor Hilda Rhodes, that on Thursday night she will be appointed to the cabinet. Therefore, it is my opinion that we have already compromised the integrity here and the impartiality of the cabinet from this process.
Right. Well, the specific rules that were agreed in the meeting on the 19th of April were that there was a requirement for group leaders wouldn't be entitled to sit on the advisory group, nor would portfolio holders who have or had in the past held the portfolio of in respect of children safeguarding. So notwithstanding what might have been said, the rules as agreed by Cabinet weren't as detailed as that, so I'm comfortable that we go ahead on the basis of Councillor Rhodes constituting part of this committee.
With all due respect, I think that part of the confidence of this and statements that came out from that lead officer need to be upheld. And he gave the undertaking that the cabinet would remain impartial.
Well, as I say, I've given my advice. I think we're in the situation at this late stage of not wanting to kind of stand in the way of that. I am comfortable that we go ahead on the basis that we've got Councillor Rhodes here.
Can you explain to me the impartiality process then?
Well, as I said, the rules that were agreed by Cabinet on the 19th of April did not discount members of the Cabinet. It discounted group leader. Well, I've explained what it discounted. So therefore, that's what was within the remit of the rules as agreed by the Cabinet, as put forward to bring this process forward. So as the person driving the process at this stage, then my view is that falls within the rules as agreed.
Can it be then that my objection is formally minuted?
Of course.
And mine.
Okay.
Mr. Monitoring Officer, if I may, I don't believe this body, as constituted, is qualified to elect a chairman. And the reason is this: there are people missing. And the people who are missing from this advisory group at this stage are the victims and survivors and victim and survivor groups. They should be at the heart of this inquiry, and they should be at the start of this inquiry. I believe if we are to continue with an advisory group at the start of this process in respect of a commissioning body and or an independent chair, then we should co-opt 3 lay members from victim and survivor groups within Telford to join this committee, and we should elect the chair from one of them. And if I extend that forward, I don't believe this advisory group should have a further role in the process beyond the creation of a commissioning group and the sourcing of an independent chair. You yourself have suggested that you propose a role for the advisory group going forward of having some responsibility for oversight. But when I asked you what authority the advisory group would have, you said that there would be none.
I think
now the date.
We're kind of moving ahead to another. There's an item on the agenda which is terms of reference, which is far more appropriate to have this conversation, we'd need really a chair at this stage to...
relevant to the selection of the chair, because I don't believe any of the 6 people here are qualified nor appropriate to chair a fully independent to be a chair within a fully independent process. We should have a chairperson who is a layperson, who is independent of the council, who is not a councillor, and I'll reiterate it, the victim and survivor groups should be at the heart of this inquiry and the start of this inquiry. They should be engaged with, and they should be here, and they should be present in this group with voting rights. And the chair should therefore come from them, which divorces councillors from this process.
I reiterate that on the 19th of April, Cabinet came up with a process that they felt met the requirements of the council agenda, and this has been processed, and we've been planning this since then. So it's the first time that these have been formally raised with me, and actually I'm pursuing the route that I was provided for in that council meeting. So I think we have to go forward on the basis as proposed in here.
Wouldn't it have been appropriate then, Mr. Chairman, to have had greater consultation between member groups on this prior to this particular point? Because I think what Councillor Nelson is actually saying there is very pertinent in this. I would differ to agree that within this constituted group here, any of us have the ability to chair, because we do not have either this experience or knowledge on this subject.
As I say, I'm pursuing the rules. I think you do have, because actually any experience or knowledge in respect to CSE isn't required for the role that this commissioning body has got in the process.
Councillor Scott. I think, unfortunately, these comments that are coming now are a little late. Seeing as how this was put forward on the 19th of April, there's been an awful long time to bring this out. If there are any difficulties with us taking it forward, I really think it should have been said long before we've sat down here at 6 o'clock. Bearing in mind what it is that this advisory group is meant to be doing, we are not supposed to be experts. We are trying to move a process on away from the council, and I think we can do that.
We are charged with finding experts.
Can I?
Exactly, that's what we...
Well, you haven't got the knowledge. Neither have I.
Can we move to the first item on the agenda? I've asked for nominations for chair. Are there any?
Yeah, I'll move Peter Scott. In the spirit of an independent inquiry, I think that the chair of this should be an independent member.
Is that seconded by anyone?
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Yes. We should have a nomination from a lay member who comes from the victim survivor groups, who should be at the heart of this inquiry and the start of this inquiry. We should certainly not be choosing someone who on social media 3 days before the motion was opposed to an independent inquiry.
Councillor Nelson, we've had a nomination, we've had that seconded. Can I put that to the vote, please? All those in favour of that? That's 4-4. That motion is carried. Can I invite you to come and take the chair, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you everybody. What we're here for tonight is to move a process forward. It's to take it out of the hands of the council towards those people who do know what they're talking about, and that is not ourselves. So I think in the spirit of that and what we're trying to achieve, we need to proceed. Now, there will be a point later on the agenda where I think, although this is not a public meeting as such, that I will be asking, with the consent of the committee, that people in the audience ask questions if they've got any, because I think that's important to be inclusive. So when we get to that point, I will indicate it, and we will be asking questions from the floor as well. To move on at this point then, we'll move to the next part, which is apologies for absence, which
there are none.
There are none, thank you. And any declarations of interest? No, at all. No, thank you. The next part is governance issues. I think I need to move this across for the information to be given, please.
Okay, my name's Suzanne Dodd. I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer and the Service Delivery Manager for Legal and Governance. I'm going to cover 3 areas of governance in relation to the structure of this group. I'm going to cover confidentiality, data protection and conflict of interest. These are areas of good governance that will give the public reassurance and confidence that we are undertaking a fair and transparent, sound and lawful process. So firstly, confidentiality. Members of this group will have access to information of a sensitive nature, some of which will be confidential information. Information which is confidential will not be in the public domain. We will use best endeavours to try and mark information as confidential. However, not all information will be marked. Therefore, any information in relation to the public inquiry that is not in the public domain should be treated as confidential. All members of this group will be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement. The aim of this confidentiality agreement is to ensure that you keep confidential information secret, safe and confidential. That you do not use or exploit confidential information in any way except for the purpose of the inquiry. That you do not directly or indirectly disclose or make available any confidential information in whole or in part to any person except as expressly permitted by and in accordance with this inquiry. This includes members of your political party or group. Not to copy, reduce to writing or otherwise record the confidential information except as strictly necessary for the purposes of the inquiry. Any such copies, reduction to writing and record shall be the property of the inquiry. And finally, to store the confidential information only on secure systems and data storage services provided by the Council, and not to use, produce, transform or store the confidential information in an externally accessible computer or transmit it in any form or by any means outside this inquiry. The draft confidentiality agreement will be circulated in the next few days for your comments. Moving on to data protection.
In that context, we will have then an opportunity to have more clarity, because I'm not expecting to be party to any information that has any confidentially attached to it at all, except potentially commercial confidentiality in respect to a tendering process. I do not want to be party to any other kind of information, nor do I believe I should be, nor do I believe I'm qualified to be.
We're just covering every eventuality, Councillor. I don't expect that you will be either, but we're just covering every eventuality.
So as I said, it will be circulated in the next few days, and we welcome your comments on that draft agreement. Data protection. We need to ensure that information is managed in line with GDPR and any other relevant legislation. So some key principles. Personal data will be processed lawfully, fairly and in a transparent manner. Personal data will be collected for a specific purpose. Data will be adequate, relevant and limited to the specific purpose of the inquiry. Where possible, accurate, up-to-date data will be used. Personal data will not be kept longer than is necessary, and personal data will be processed safely and securely. We will be putting together a data protection protocol for this inquiry. This document will give you further advice and assistance, and if you're unsure, please ask the monitoring officer or the deputy. Finally, conflicts of interests. Managing conflicts of interest is crucial to the inquiry. The perception that a conflict of interest has influenced an outcome can undermine public confidence in the integrity of the inquiry. A conflict of interest is a set of circumstances that creates a risk that a professional judgment or action regarding a primary interest will be unduly influenced by a secondary interest. There are different types of conflicts of interest. There is actual conflict of interest. This is where you can be influenced by your private interests. There's perceived conflict of interest. This is where you appear to be influenced by your private interests and potential conflicts of interest. This is where you may in the future be influenced by your private interests. Not all conflicts of interest are wrong. It's how they are managed that's important. There may be occasions when your private interests, so your own private interests, may come into conflict with your public duty to put the public interest first at all times. All conflicts of interest must be disclosed and managed effectively. So one may ask, how do I know if I've got a conflict of interest in relation to this inquiry? Well, this is where this will occur where you have an interest that clashes with the interests of the inquiry. So if you identify a conflict of interest or have a potential conflict of interest, you must disclose it to the monitoring officer or his deputy. We've come up with strategies how to manage or deal with conflicts of interest, and they include maintaining a register of interest. This is for low risk conflicts of interest where recording the conflict of interest is sufficient to maintain transparency. We will restrict in certain circumstances, so this is where we put a restriction on your involvement in the matter to oversee part or all of the process that deals with the matter. This is suitable where you can effectively separate from parts of the activity or process, and the conflict of interest is not likely to arise frequently. We may ask you to relinquish, so choose to remove yourself from the matter completely. This is suitable where your commitment to the public duty outweighs your interest to a private matter. And finally, we may ask you to resign where there is no other workable option in relation to that conflict of interest. So just to summarise, good governance and ensuring that we undertake a transparent, fair and sound process is paramount. And if you have any questions or concerns about what I've raised today, please contact myself or the monitoring officer and we can direct you further.
Okay, thank you very much. What we're here for this evening are two things really. One is to set the terms of reference, and two is to agree a way forward to procure a commissioning body. That is it, really.
Sorry, Chair. We absolutely don't set the terms of reference.
No, sorry. For this, I beg your pardon.
Yeah,
bearing in mind when I was sat there, I wasn't expecting to be sat here. When I say that, the terms of reference for this meeting, not for anything to do with independent inquiries, the terms of reference for this meeting only, and then we will move on to how we move forward to procure a commissioning body. From there, it will go to that commissioning body eventually through the monitoring officer and his officers, out of the hands of councillors, which is as it should be. So we'll move to the next point, which is the terms of reference. Now you can see on your agenda, and those who have agendas, that we have two areas there, and I will read them out for those who haven't got a copy. To work to commission an independent organisation, the commissioning body, who will draft a final commission and use that to appoint an independent chair who will establish an independent inquiry. That's the first part. The second is to monitor progress against an agreed project plan in respect of the same. Now, what I would ask, is there anything else you would like to see added to those terms of reference?
I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, refer back to the words of the monitoring officer on one of the few things he didn't put me straight on, which was that in terms of the constitution of this advisory body and who is represented on it, this was the point to raise the issue. Again, since I've already raised it, that victim and survivor groups should be at the heart of this inquiry and the start of this inquiry. And I believe, but more than believe, it's also knowledge obtained very recently, which partly explains why some of these interventions have come as late as they have, is because we've had some knowledge that we've gained very recently, in fact on Saturday, which was relatively late in the process. But only the people who attended that particular event would know and have that knowledge. and no one to my left has that knowledge because they didn't attend. But to enable the victim and survivors to be at the heart and start of this process, we need, I propose, 3 representatives of victim and survivor groups to join this advisory group and to engage in this process. Is this the right point to raise it?
It's a point to raise it, yes.
Well, that being the case, that point's been raised, can I open up to the floor and ask what other people's opinions is on that, please?
Chair, would you like me to explain why it's currently drafted as it is?
Please.
Firstly, because actually that's what the design was as set out by Cabinet, and I'll go back to that time and again. But also, clearly, as you look into the paperwork, there are 3 stages. This process describes 3 stages for this process. One, this stage of the process to appoint a commissioning body. The second stage of the process is for the commissioning body to go out and secure and appoint an independent person. And the third stage is for the independent person to chair the inquiry. There are, in the draft specification documents, which is the thing that describes what we want to buy as we go through the process, there are several references to the importance of the inclusion of survivors, representatives and their families in respect of being engaged by the commissioning body and by the independent chair in such things as drafting the terms of reference, and also actually having some involvement in the appointment of the independent chair. So there is when we get to the point of actually, if you like, getting to the nuts and bolts of the issues at hand that have been raised by the inquiry into CSE, then there is a lot of provision, and it's absolutely crucial, and it was clear all the way through the design of this that the involvement and the engagement with survivors, families and others was absolutely crucial. So you do have the paperwork here, but I've just, for the sake of, there are the highlighted bits are areas where it refers to the importance of having engagement with and seeking the views of those people. So what I'm saying is, when the time comes for that, then it's absolutely crucial. The reason we didn't do it here was balancing against the fact, and there was a lot of desire for us to get on with this as quickly as possible. Actually, this is a process where, as the chair has said, what we're asking members to do tonight is to agree a procurement process effectively that we go out to procure in a fair, transparent manner, and the details describing what the specification looks like for somebody else to design the inquiry process. Obviously, when we get to the design of the inquiry process, the involvement of the survivors is absolutely crucial. I can't stress that enough. But at this stage, it was just a balance of, well, we could do that, but actually, it's about proportionality and having people involved at the right time when their knowledge and experience is absolutely crucial. So that's the thinking behind where we are. That's a choice for members to make, but that's why we did it. This is just a shift left out of the council. In any other process, this is actually an additional process in the inquiry process. So we've added this bit to make it as independent as possible, and all we're doing is shifting it left to give it to somebody else who will then design the actual inquiry process. And obviously your role is important in that.
Thank you, Mr. Managing Officer. I totally agree actually with what you're saying there. There will be opportunities, and there should be opportunities later. However, because that's been mentioned by Councillor Nelson, I would like to hear what the views of other members as to what their thoughts are on this particular issue.
I think we're looking at, we're looking at the tendering process, appointment of the chair. Like we do with scrutiny, we have co-optees, we appoint people with specialist knowledge. Would a representative from, for example, the LGA be suitable for this committee? suggestion, that's all.
I think that, sorry if I could, Chair, there's a provision in the report. The LGA is a local government association, so it's a national body that provides advice to local councils, provides support in complicated issues that are of a national basis. There is a provision in the report that suggests that when we get, if you approve the procurement process, part of that process is that when we get bids in from whoever bids to do the work, we have to evaluate those bids against a set of criteria. The proposal was that we would get a member of the LGA in to come and give that a level of independence to that, so that they would bid that. So that will be where I think the LGA could add value to the process.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I have one. Where does this advisory body gain its expertise in relation to those that it may or may not appoint, without having first-hand knowledge of what we're doing?
Well, it's my belief that an understanding that the monitoring officer and council experts in procurement will go forward and deal with that, because they are simply that. They are experts in procuring this kind of inquiry. We are not, and I recognise that, Councillor Bentley, completely. I wouldn't try...
With all due respect, Mr Chairman, I think that statement is a bit bold, in as much as we have never ever commissioned an inquiry like that within this authority.
But we have still have people who have the experience to do that, and we must look to the people with the experience and the knowledge. It's as simple as that. I would ask you, where else would you think we would go?
I would look to appoint an independent, somebody that has expertise in this field, that could bring proper advice to this body for us to make a decision on the appointees.
Fair comment, but that's not really what we're looking to do.
We have a remit. We are not constrained by what has been put down here.
We were told we were not constrained by what's been put down here.
Therefore, we have the ability to take an alternative course.
In fact, we have the opportunity to show willing to the people of Telford that we're willing to include them in this process, and very specifically the people of Telford, who are the reason we're here, who unfortunately have been the subject of the crime of CSE that we're discussing. Now, if no one from victim and survivor groups or individuals with victim and survivor experience wants to come forward, so be it. But we haven't asked.
Thank you. Well, we'll hold that thought. A couple of comments here, Councillor Bundle.
Yeah, I accept that point. I think that is a valid point that Councillor Nelson has made. I mean, I know this is going to be a double independent process. So basically, we are removing ourselves from the actual investigation, but it still may be advisable to actually go to the groups, to actually give them that opportunity to actually take part in because we're an advisory or a monitoring committee, so we aren't going to be part of the independent process. But I do think Councillor Nelson has a point there.
Can I put some points to you that you need to consider if you're going to go down that line? You need to consider how you're going to go out and talk to the groups. You're going to need to consider how you're going to select members from the survivors groups. You're going to have to provide some training for them. There is a process, there is a period of time that you are accepting is going to delay the process. So as we've designed this, there was a clear steer from all members, very, very clear from even council meetings, that we needed to get on with this, and people didn't want us to put this into the long grass. So we've taken the view that this is the most efficient way of doing it, and we've taken the view, you know, as I say, that actually the real value that survivors can add is in terms of contributing to the terms of reference, making sure that all of their concerns can be addressed, and also in the appointment of the independent chair, the person who is going to be looking into this to deal with this. This is, as I say, without doing it down, it's a relatively straightforward process. It's about, do we want to procure in a straightforward way, and what does the specification look like? The specification, as I say, does deal with the high level issues that need to be addressed, but it can't go into any great detail because that would be seen to be presuming or influencing the terms of reference. So actually at this stage we really have to be saying to, if survivors were looking at this and saying, well, actually, you know, all it says is we want an inquiry to look at CSC in Telford. It doesn't say when, it doesn't say what it is, it just says that, because that's for somebody else to do. That's not for us to do, because the clear message from council, from cabinet, was that we move this out of the council for other people to design in consultation with those people. So all this is doing is saying we would like you to do that job. So actually, as I say, balancing speed against those considerations, that was why this proposal came forward in the way it did. You can agree with it or you can disagree with it, but that's how we came to this proposal.
And I think that's a fair comment, because we can either make this extremely easy or extremely difficult. It depends on which way we go with this. Councillor England, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I think, well, no illusion, this is the single most important issue ever to face the borough. No doubt about that. You know, we don't stand as councillors to deal with issues like this. You know, we don't. But we've got to. So far, I'm hearing delaying tactics and statements to try and delay the process, or councillors that are too scared to try and face up to what's going on and to get on with this process.
We've been too scared for many years.
Sorry, delaying tactics?
Well, we
Really?
had two statements at the beginning.
Really?
to try and
Who's
change
been
the process.
putting off having an independent inquiry at all? Excuse me about delaying
Councillor Nelson,
tactics. Forgive me, Mr.
let's
Chairman.
let's not get
Outrageous statement from
let-
someone to my left.
Let us not get into arguments at all in terms of
Could the
that.
member please keep his comments to himself about delaying tactics and independent
I
inquiries?
feel we should all
Thank you.
calm down a little bit on this. We won't make any progress, and we need to. If we can't agree on something as simple as terms of reference, we're not going to get very far. Now, we have a clear steer in terms of what those should be on the agenda itself. I do appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Nelson. It would be ideal in some respects to have others as part of this, but we did agree as a council we were going to have 6 councillors, 2 from each group, who would do a...
It's been imposed. Forgive me, I have to interrupt. I do apologise for interrupting. However, I propose that we engage 3 lay members. We find it extremely easy to do on scrutiny committee. The council has a lot of experience engaging lay members on scrutiny committee, so I don't think it would be terribly difficult nor terribly time consuming. It was seconded by my colleague. We really ought to have a vote.
Before we put that forward, when you say engage 3 members, what would you like them to specifically do?
They would join this advisory group.
Okay. And have you any indication from anyone that they would wish to do this?
Well, there was some applause from the audience when I mentioned the idea, but that may not have been indicative.
Okay.
It also might be really good practice, and it also might be a fabulous signal to the people of Telford that we are willing to engage with them on this.
We have that put forward by Councillor Nelson. Has anyone got any other issues they want to put forward?
Can I quickly comment on expediency, seeing as that was mentioned?
No, not at the moment, Councillor Bentley. No, let's nail this as we are.
Well, I seconded what Tim said already.
So we have a seconder for it. I have no problem whether we do it or don't do it, to be fair. We have to follow procedure. So all those in favour of Councillor Nelson's... okay. Well, that's pretty unanimous then. But that depends on whether there are people sat here tonight who would wish...
Not tonight. Not tonight.
You don't wish to do it...
Through a due process. The council has experience of such matters.
Chair, my advice
As
is
quickly as you can.
if you've taken that debate, you have to adjourn the meeting now, because there's no this meeting is no longer quorate, is it? So if that's where we are. So you have taken a vote, you have decided. I propose that the next meeting on the 30th we come back with proposals for how we engage with members of the survivors for your approval, and we take it forward on that basis.
And possibly on
with
that
a view to
meeting,
looking
there may
at-
be individuals who could join if they meet the relevant criteria.
I can't advise that. You've got to go through a fair appointment process, So we will have to then be looking at setting up meetings through into June to go through that process and get those people appointed.
Well, on the basis that we should listen to advice given, always. We've had that advice. In the interest of democracy, I've put that forward. It's been unanimously agreed, so we need to adjourn this meeting then until the 30th of May. In the meantime, the discussions need to be made as to who it is that's going to come forward on that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned.